Good afternoon, I'm Zsolt Boda. I will invoke one more European project, further strengthening these synergies between... Okay, good. Thank you. I will talk mostly about policymaking, governance. My specialization in political science, if any, it's in policy studies, and about emotions as well. So I was leading a project which is called DEMOS, Democratic Efficiency and the Varieties of Populism in Europe. So it was not about illiberalism, it was about populism. And in this project, we developed, among others, a model of populist policymaking that we published, which was quite well received by the scholarly community. I suppose because we were kind of early birds in talking about the public policy impacts of populism. So populism is not just politics, it's not just the movements, parties, discourses, but it's also about policy making. So with my colleagues Attila Bart and Szikra Dorottya, we published it. And so I will very shortly talk about this model, and then I will show to you a few preliminary results from our ongoing MORES project, which is about emotions, moral emotions in politics. And I will more specifically talk about this big data analysis that we did on parliamentary speeches and show some of the researches which are also going on in terms of policy and emotions. So this is the ideal typical model that we constructed. We contrasted it to the liberal democratic policymaking model, the ideal type of liberal democratic policymaking that I won't show here. Just very shortly, so this model is about conceptualizing populism again, not illiberalism, in policy making along three dimensions: policy content, policy process, and policy discourses. Now, as we know, Carl Schmitt famously said that populism is a thin ideology, that there is no such thing as populist policies. So the first variable of the model acknowledges this. So we said that, okay, in terms of content, maybe populist policies are ideologically multifaceted and diverse. However, we thought that still we can say, and maybe if somebody would like to apply this model, why not, on illiberal governance, this is one point where maybe this should be like rethought, because maybe illiberalism has a more better defined ideological profile, so to speak. But still, I think that we can say something in content-wise. For instance, that populist policies, of course, tend to follow the majoritarian will, even if it involves like some kind of hostility against minorities, especially unpopular minorities. In another paper, I tried to demonstrate that how Orban, for instance, follows more closely the public opinion. Fidesz or Orban is not necessarily doing what the majority of people want, but he's refraining from doing what the majority doesn't like. You know, it's very important. And it's quite a difference compared to the socialist governments who boldly engaged into unpopular technocratic policy reforms. So in populist policies, this majoritarian will is more important. The other 2 points are also, I think, interesting. So we think that just because populists, politicians, and maybe illiberals as well, do not respect technocratic expertise, policy paradigms, they don't respect policy monopolies, they just break them out, so break them down, you know. That's why radical and paradigmatic policy reforms happen more often. You know, in policy studies, this is a kind of iron law that policies change slowly, incrementally, as we say. And if there is a large change or paradigmatic change, it should be explained, and a lot of policy change theories try to explain and show that which are the factors that lead to large or paradigmatic policy change. Now we say that here politics may play a role, and under populist governance, these large changes, policy changes, are more frequent. And also, populist politicians sometimes are innovative in policy making. Innovation is not doesn't have a positive balance here. Okay, it just means something new which goes against the established policy paradigms. Again, think about Trump or even Orban was quite innovative, coming up with new ideas that nobody would have thought of. Now, in terms of policy process, it's not so interesting. Of course, it's top-down decision making. Populists are anti-pluralist, anti-liberal in this sense. So the whole policy process is more centralized, and the policy actors and the institutions are circumvented. In terms of policy discourses, we speculated that actually populists just because they want to make big changes, and sometimes this might be difficult, not necessarily for Orban, because Orban has a constitutional majority in the parliament, so he could, and he's doing a lot. But sometimes, for instance, in the case of Erdogan or Trump the first, there were some institutional constraints. So populist politicians try to use words to change things, and this is what the concept of discoursive governance is about. I think it still applies even to Trump too, and even to Orban, who has been very active in policies, but still he was promising and talking about more than he actually did. So this is discoursive governance. And finally, we arrive to the emotions. So of course, it has been shown that populist discourses are more emotional, especially in negative emotions. So we also speculate that this kind of policy discourses have a stronger emotional load, especially with adversarial narratives against the enemies of the people. Okay, so this is the project, and now this was the model of the previous project, and in this current project, MORES, we try to analyze emotions, but also emotions in policy making, of course. So we know that in Hungary there are a lot of emotions in political communication. These are just for those who are not familiar with Hungarian politics. Those are billboards of the Hungarian government. Okay, so the Hungarian government is producing these billboards on Brussels sanctions against Russia as portrayed as bombs. It's about war and peace, and von Leiden as a puppet master, etc. But the question is that what about policy narrative? So we started some research on more specifically looking at policy narratives, not just political communication in general. So there is a project which has been done by Claudia Radelli and the EUI. They are also part of the MORES project. They actually analyzed the Hungarian policy narratives on the farm-to-fork policy of the European Union, which is a kind of agricultural policy, and how emotions and moral emotions have been used in these narratives. Now, but I won't talk about that, but very shortly about this big data analysis that we did on parliamentary speeches. Actually, this is an analysis that we did in 4 countries, Hungary, Germany, Poland, and France. The French data lagging behind. The German and Polish data we do already have, but we analyzed so far only the Hungarian data, so I will talk about these results. The model that we use is a version of Excel and Roberta. The corpus is full text of Hungarian parliamentary speeches. So here we focused on parliamentary speeches. Parliamentary speeches have a special role. I mean, they are political speeches, but at the same time, policy speeches as well. Here we try to look at them as policy speeches from 1998 to 2022, which is about almost 400,000 speeches in the Hungarian parliament. And more than 5 million sentences, because actually the analysis was done at the sentence level. So we categorize sentences, and we use the basic emotions: anger, fear, joy, sadness, disgust, and surprise. We also use policy topics, which comes from the Comparative Agendas project that we are also part of. Okay, so the research questions were that first we were asking whether is there a trend of growing emotionalization, because we were speculating that since Orban has been in power from 2010, and he's a kind of populist, illiberal politician, so maybe this had an effect on the emotional expression of political speeches. So here we are looking at the emotional expressions in political discourse, okay? So it can be the expression of what I feel, or I can evoke emotions of others, that people are afraid that the government will do this and that, etc. So we are talking about all kinds of emotional expressions in political speeches, and we were speculating that maybe there is a growing trend. Now, since my time is really running, I will answer right here. I will show some graphs, but I will answer. So there is. So in Hungary, there is a clear trend of growing emotionalization of parliamentary speeches, and actually 2010 being a kind of threshold. So in the regression analysis, it came out that it's really a threshold. So after 2010, this growing emotionalization sped up. This is not so much in Germany, for instance, where the emotional level is more or less the same. Poland is a little bit more complicated. There were some ups and downs, but when peace came to power, there we can also observed some kind of growing emotionalization of parliamentary speeches. So talking about maybe early warning signs, this could be also, but that with illiberal politics, the emotional tone of the parliamentary speeches at least is growing. We tried also to establish the factors behind the stronger emotionalization of political speeches. So we were looking at the government versus opposition MPs, the individual characteristic of the MPs, the ideological groups of the parties, issue saliency and policy field. What is the most important, apparently, and this is in line with the results of Giuliano, that opposition MPs use much more emotion than the government, irrespective of the color of the government. So Fidesz was more emotionalized where it was in opposition, and actually relatively less emotionalized when they were in government. So being in opposition actually makes you use more emotions, and actually this is more important than the ideological group of the party. So there's not really a connection between the use of emotions. I mean, we could find that the right-wing parties maybe use a little bit more sadness, but you know, so there is not a very clear-cut pattern in this. The individual characteristic of the members of parliament plays some roles. For instance, men use more anger and joy, while female MPs use more fear, but it's not, again, very strong. Issue saliency has some effect. I will show the example of immigration, but it's not the same for all policy topics. But here we measured issue saliency only in terms of the parliamentary speeches. So saliency was defined as the growth of the proportion of a policy topic. So we are not talking about general political saliency. I think it maybe would have another or more important effect. And in policy fields as well, we have some results I will show. So this is just very descriptive graph. It's about emotion. You can see that anger, joy, and fear are the most often used emotions in parliamentary speeches, at least in Hungary. Disgust, sadness, and surprise, we could barely find them. Maybe this is also a question of the model. I don't know. And this is the none of them which are either sentences which do not contain emotions or not those emotions, but I think mostly they are less emotionalized. And you can see that there is a quite clear-cut trend of decreasing proportion of those sentences which do not contain emotions, which means that there's a growing emotionalization. Here it's not visible, but again in the regression analysis it was clear that after 2010 this trend sped up and emotionalization grew. In terms of policy fields, these are the policy fields according to the Comparative Agendas project. You can see that there are some differences, but not very, very interesting or marked. The most emotionalized topic is immigration for the whole period, but it's quite interesting that immigration in the Hungarian parliament was not at all emotionalized for 4 of the governmental cycles, and it became emotionalized only after the 2015 immigration crisis, and it became so much emotionalized that on average for the whole period it became first as the most emotionalized policy field. So it really stirred up emotions, but otherwise, as I said, in Hungary it was not an emotionalized topic. Macroeconomics actually is also quite emotionalized, strange, but austerity measures and things like this also evoke some emotions. So this is the case of emotion. You can see that immigration, so just around the immigration crisis of 2015-16, with the saliency, the emotionalization of immigration grew. But again, it's not necessary for all kind of policy topics. What is the role of emotions here? It's not clear, and we have to think about it. Is it just a consequence, or are emotions doing something? Are they contributing to the saliency? I don't know. We have to think about it. Now this is just really descriptive. So what we will also do, actually we already did a survey experiment also in 4 countries on the emotional framing of immigration stories actually, and how the different emotion framings changes the support for EU immigration policies. we have the data we started to analyze. There are some interesting insights, or there will be, I think. We would like also to do another big data analysis, combining this emotional analysis with the illiberal nature of the discourses, and look at how illiberal discourses, which emotions are used by illiberal discourses. This is a plan. And there is also a task in our project which is about policy change and the role of moral emotions. So we will work on that with the UI team, and there will be also, so there will be some more research coming on about policies and emotions. Thank you very much for your attention. Just one more word. AUTHLIB is over, but MORES is still running, so please check us out on the social media, follow us, and subscribe to the newsletter, etc., because it's very important for us. Thank you very much.